Through the Looking Glass, and What Alice Found There is a novel by Lewis Carroll, the sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Set some 6 months later than the earlier book, Alice again enters a fantastical world, this time by climbing through a mirror into the world that she can see beyond it. Though not quite as popular as Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass includes such celebrated verses as Jabberwocky, and the Walrus and the Carpenter, and the episode involving Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Plot summary. Alice is playing with a white kitten and a black kitten, the offspring of Dinah, Alice's cat in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, when she ponders what the world is like on the other side of a mirror's reflection. Climbing up on the fireplace mantel, she pokes at the wall-hung mirror behind the fireplace and discovers, to her surprise, that she is able to step through it to an alternative world. In this reflected version of her own house, she finds a book with looking glass poetry, Jabberwocky, whose reversed printing she can read only by holding it up to the mirror. She also observes that the chess pieces have come to life, though they remain small enough for her to pick up. Upon leaving the house, she enters a sunny spring garden where the flowers have the power of human speech. They perceive Alice as being a flower that can move about. Elsewhere in the garden, Alice meets the Red Queen, who is now human-sized, and who impresses Alice with her ability to run at breathtaking speeds. This is a reference to the chess rule that queens are able to move any number of vacant squares at once, in any direction, which makes them the most agile of pieces. The Red Queen reveals to Alice that the entire countryside is laid out in squares, like a gigantic chessboard, and offers to make Alice a queen if she can move all the way to the 8th rank row in a chess match. This is a reference to the chess rule of promotion. Alice is placed in the 2nd rank as one of the White Queen's pawns, and begins her journey across the chessboard by boarding a train that literally jumps over the 3rd row and directly into the 4th rank, thus acting on the rule that pawns can advance 2 spaces on their first move. She then meets the fat twin brothers Tweedledum and Tweedledee, whom she knows from the famous nursery rhyme. After reciting the long poem The Walrus and the Carpenter, the Tweedles draw Alice's attention to the Red King loudly snoring away under a nearby tray and maliciously provoke her with idle philosophical banter that she exists only as an imaginary figure in the Red King's dreams. Finally, the brothers begin acting out their nursery rhyme by suiting up for battle, only to be frightened away by an enormous crow, as the nursery rhyme about them predicts. Alice next meets the White Queen, who is very absent-minded but boasts of her ability to remember future events before they have happened. Alice and the White Queen advance into the chessboard's 5th rank by crossing over a brook together, but at the very moment of the crossing, the Queen transforms into a talking sheep in a small shop. Alice soon finds herself struggling to handle the oars of a small rowboat, where the sheep annoys her with nonsensical shouting about crabs and feathers. Unknown to Alice, these are standard terms in the jargon of rowing. Thus the Queen Sheep was speaking in a perfectly logical and meaningful way. After crossing yet another brook into the 6th rank, Alice immediately encounters Humpty Dumpty, who, besides celebrating his own birthday, provides his own translation of the strange terms in Jabberwocky. In the process, he introduces Alice to the concept of portmanteau words, before his inevitable fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men come to Humpty Dumpty's assistance, and are accompanied by the White King, along with the lion and the unicorn, who again proceed to act out a nursery rhyme by fighting with each other. In this chapter, the March Hare and Hatter of the first book make a brief reappearance in the guise of Anglo-Saxon messengers called Hare and Hatter. Upon leaving the lion and unicorn to their fight, Alice reaches the 7th rank by crossing another brook into the forested territory of the Red Knight, who is intent on capturing the White Pawn who is Alice until the White Knight comes to her rescue. Escorting her through the forest towards the final brook crossing, the knight recites a long poem of his own composition called Haddock's Eyes, and repeatedly falls off his horse. His clumsiness is a reference to the eccentric L-shaped movements of chess knights, and may also be interpreted as a self-deprecating joke about Lewis Carroll's own physical awkwardness and stammering in real life. Bidding farewell to the White Knight, Alice steps across the last brook, and is automatically crowned a queen, with the crown materializing abruptly on her head. She soon finds herself in the company of both the White and Red Queens, who relentlessly confound Alice by using wordplay to thwart her attempts at logical discussion. They then invite one another to a party that will be hosted by the newly crowned Alice, of which Alice herself had no prior knowledge. Alice arrives and seats herself at her own party, which quickly turns to a chaotic uproar, much like the ending of the first book. Alice finally grabs the Red Queen, believing her to be responsible for all the day's nonsense, and begins shaking her violently with all her might. By thus capturing the Red Queen, Alice unknowingly puts the Red King into checkmate, and thus is allowed to wake up. Alice suddenly awakes in her armchair to find herself holding the Black Kitten, whom she deduces to have been the Red Queen all along, with the White Kitten having been the White Queen. The story ends with Alice recalling the speculation of the Tweedle brothers, that everything may have, in fact, been a dream of the Red King, and that Alice might herself be no more than a figment of his imagination. One final poem is inserted by the author as a sort of epilogue which suggests that life itself is but a dream. Characters, main characters, Alice, Bandersnatch, Hare, Hatter, Humpty Dumpty, the Jabberwock, Jubjab, Red King, Red Queen, the Lion and the Unicorn, the Sheep, the Walrus and the Carpenter, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, White King, White Knight, White Queen. Minor characters. Returning characters, the characters of Hatter and Hare make an appearance, and are pictured to resemble their Wonderland counterparts, the Hatter and the March Hare. However, Alice does not recognize them as such. Dinah, Alice's cat, also makes a return, this time with her two kittens, Kitty and Snowdrop. At the end of the book they are associated with the Red Queen and the White Queen respectively in the Looking Glass world. Though she does not appear, Alice's sister is mentioned. In both Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, there are puns and quips about two non-existing characters, Nobody and Somebody. Paradoxically, the gnat calls Alice an old friend, though it was never introduced in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Writing style and themes, symbolism. The themes and settings of Through the Looking Glass make it a kind of mirror image of Wonderland. The first book begins outdoors, in the warm month of May, uses frequent changes in size as a plot device, and draws on the imagery of playing cards. The second opens indoors on a snowy, wintry night exactly 6 months later, on November 4th, uses frequent changes in time and spatial directions as a plot device, and draws on the imagery of chess. In it, there are many mirror themes, including opposites, time running backwards, and so on. The White Queen offers to hire Alice as her lady's maid and to pay her twopence a week, and jam every other day. Alice says that she doesn't want any jam today, and the Queen tells her, "You couldn't have it if you did want it." The rule is, jam tomorrow and jam yesterday but never jam today. This is a reference to the rule in Latin that the word iam or jam meaning now in the sense of already or at the time cannot be used to describe now in the present, which is nunc in Latin. Jam is therefore never available today. Chess. Whereas the first book has the deck of cards as a theme, this book is based on a game of chess, played on a giant chessboard with fields for squares. Most main characters in the story are represented by a chess piece or animals, with Alice herself being a pawn. The Looking Glass world is divided into sections by brooks or streams, with the crossing of each brook usually signifying a notable change in the scene and action of the story. The brooks represent the divisions between squares on the chessboard, and Alice's crossing of them signifies advancing of her piece one square. Furthermore, since the brook crossings do not always correspond to the beginning and ends of chapters, most editions of the book visually represent the crossings by breaking the text with several lines of asterisks. The sequence of moves is not always followed. The most extensive treatment of the chess motif in Carroll's novel is provided in Glendowney's The Truth About Pawn Promotion, the development of the chess motif in Victorian fiction. Poems and songs. Prelude, Jabberwocky including readings, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, The Lion and the Unicorn, The Walrus and the Carpenter, Humpty Dumpty, In Winter When the Fields Are White. Haddock's Eyes / The Aged Man / Ways and Means / A Sitting on a Gate. The song is A Sitting on a Gate, but its other names and callings are placed above. To the Looking-Glass World it was Alice that said, "White Queen's Riddle, a boat beneath a sunny sky" is the first line of a titleless acrostic poem at the end of the book. The beginning letters of each line, when put together, spell Alice Pleasance Liddell. The Wasp in a Wig. Lewis Carroll decided to suppress a scene involving what was described as a wasp in a wig. It has been suggested in a biography by Carroll's nephew, Stuart Dodgson Collingwood, that one of the reasons for this suppression was due to the suggestion of his illustrator, John Tenniel. In a letter to Carroll, dated June 1, 1870, Tenniel wrote, "I am bound to say that the Wasp chapter doesn't interest me in the least, and I can't see my way to a picture. If you want to shorten the book, I can't help thinking with all submission that there is your opportunity." For many years no one had any idea what this missing section was or whether it had survived. In 1974, a document purporting to be the galley proofs of the missing section was sold at Sotheby's. The catalogue description read, in part, that the proofs were bought at the sale of the author's personal effects. Oxford, 1898. The bid was won by John Fleming, a Manhattan book dealer. The winning bid was £1,700. The contents were subsequently published in Martin Gardner's The Annotated Alice, the definitive edition, and is also available as a hardback book. The Wasp in a Wig, a suppressed episode. The rediscovered section describes Alice's encounter with a wasp wearing a yellow wig, and includes a full previously unpublished poem. If included in the book, it would have followed, or been included at the end of, Chapter 8. The chapter featuring the encounter with the White Knight. The discovery is generally accepted as genuine, but the proofs have yet to receive any physical examination to establish age and authenticity. Dramatic adaptations. The book has been adapted several times, in combination with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and as a stand-alone film or television special. Stand-alone versions. The adaptations include live and TV musicals, live-action and animated versions. One of the earliest adaptations was a silent movie directed by Walter Lang, Alice Through a Looking Glass, in 1928. A dramatized version directed by Douglas Cleverdon and starring Jane Asher was recorded in the late 1950s by Argo Records, with actors Tony Church, Norman Shelley and Carlton Hobbs, and Margarita Scott as the narrator. Musical versions include the 1966 TV musical with songs by Moose Charlotte, and Judy Rowland in the role of Alice, a Christmas 2007 multimedia stage adaptation of The Tobacco Factory directed and conceived by Andy Burden, written by Hattie Naylor, music and lyrics by Paul Dodgson, and a 2008 opera Through the Looking Glass by Alan John. Television versions include the 1973 BBC TV movie, Alice Through the Looking Glass, with Sarah Sutton playing Alice, a 1982 38-minute Soviet cutout animated film made by Kiv Norshvam Studio and directed by Efrem Prutsansky, an animated TV movie in 1987, with Janet Waldo as the voice of Alice in the 1998 Channel 4 TV movie, with Kate Beckinsale playing the role of Alice. This production restored the Lost Wasp in a Wig episode. In March 2011, Japanese companies Toei and Banpsto announced that a collaborative animation project based on Through the Looking Glass, tentatively titled Kaiyaza Gigawatts, in production. With Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, adaptations combined with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland include the 1933 live-action movie Alice in Wonderland, starring a huge all-star cast and Charlotte Henry in the role of Alice. It featured most of the elements from Through the Looking Glass as well, including W.C. Fields' Humpty Dumpty, and a harmonizing animated version of The Walrus and the Carpenter. The 1951 animated Disney movie Alice in Wonderland also features several elements from Through the Looking Glass, including the poems Jabberwocky, and The Walrus and the Carpenter. Another adaptation, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, produced by Joseph Shaft Productions in 1972 with Fiona Fullerton as Alice, included the twins Fred and Frank Cox as Tweedledum and Tweedledee. The 2010 movie Alice in Wonderland by Tim Burton contains elements of both Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Combined stage productions include the 1980 version, produced and written by Elizabeth Siddows, Alice in Concert, performed on a bare stage. Meryl Streep played the role of Alice, with additional supporting cast by Mark Lynn-Baker and Betty Oberlin. In 2007, Chicago-based Looking Glass Theatre Company debuted an acrobatic interpretation of Alice's adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass with Looking Glass Alice. Looking Glass Alice was performed in New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, and in a version of the show which toured the United States. The 1985 two-part TV musical Alice in Wonderland, produced by Irwin Allen, covers both books. Alice was played by Natalie Gregory. In this adaptation, the Jabberwocky materializes into reality after Alice reads Jabberwocky, and pursues her through the second half of the musical. The 1999 made-for-TV Hallmark NBC film Alice in Wonderland, with Tina Majorino as Alice, merges elements from Through the Looking Glass including the talking flowers, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Walrus and the Carpenter, and the chess theme including the snoring Red King and White Knight. The 2009 sci-fi TV miniseries Alice contains elements from Alice's adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. The 1977 film Jabberwocky expands the story of the poem Jabberwocky. The 1936 Mickey Mouse short film Through the Mirror has Mickey travel through his mirror and into a bizarre world. The 1959 film Donald in Mathmagic Land includes a segment with Donald Duck dressed as Alice meeting the Red Queen on a chessboard. See also: References, Notes, Citations, Other sources, External links, media related to Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There at Wikimedia Commons, a catalogue of illustrated editions of the Alice books from 1899 to 2009, online texts, Through the Looking Glass at Project Gutenberg, Through the Looking Glass free audiobook at LibriVox, HTML version with commentary of Sabian religion, text of A Wasp in a Wig, see 1917 edition from archive.org. A Euroscan for download or reading online, multiple formats, plain text, concordance, see Sue.